going on, you guys? Today we got another guest artist video, and you guys have been asking a lot for a tiger tattoo. Today is the day. We got one of the artists at the shop. He was kind enough to go ahead and we're gonna do another guest artist video. So he's a really cool guy. He just started working here about 4 or 5 months ago, but you know, we're in Sacramento, California, and oh look, there he is right now. We're gonna get him in here. He's gonna introduce himself, and we're gonna be good to go.
What's up, YouTube? My name is Marcos. I go by Marcos James Tattoos on Instagram. Today, we're gonna do a little video about how I approach my tattoos. I've been doing this for about 12 to 14 years. The reason why I say that is because I started off at my house, just doing it as just my homies and my brothers, sisters, little stuff, and then I decided to take it serious a couple years after. So 12 to 14 years, I don't know the exact time, but yeah. I have the best job in the world, and today we're gonna go over this tattoo that I did a couple weeks ago. It's a tiger tattoo. It's hyper realism. That's my style, black and gray. And I'm gonna kind of just go over how I approach my tattoos, how I get started, how I start my day, how I prep for my tattoo, and then I'll go through all my little techniques, and hopefully, if you're not a tattooer, you could just have a little insight to the process. If you're a tattooer, if you're just starting out, hopefully you might learn a thing or two that'll take you to the next level when it comes to doing hyper black and gray realism or just animal portraits. So without any further ado, let's get started. So I like to use Procreate. I have a iPad Pro. Ever since I switched to the iPad, it's been a game changer. Everybody has their own way of doing things. Some people like to stencil by hand. I feel like it takes a lot out of me to do it that way because it takes about 45 minutes to an hour for me to do a stencil by hand. And by then, I'm usually tired already. My hand kind of starts to get cramped up. So I like to do it on the iPad because I could actually get it done the night before. It also allows me to resize it if I need to, where if you stencil by hand, you're kind of stuck with that size. Otherwise, if you or the client decide to go bigger or go smaller, you kind of have to redo the whole thing. So it just makes life easier. Right here, as you can see, I'm using a 13 curved mag. I like to use bug pin needles. The tattoo cartridges, tattoo needles, they come in different gauges, which is a different thickness of the needle. The standard, industry standard, is usually a 12 gauge, or that would be 0.35. I use a bug pin, which is 0.30, or it's a number 10. When I'm doing animals such as this, a tiger has a lot of stripes, so I like to use heavy black and almost solid on the stripes. It just makes it more dynamic, more readable from across the room, and that's kind of what I go for. With animals, what I stress is the small details. I want my textures there. I want it to look like you can literally brush your hand across this tattoo and feel the fur. When you're looking at it, that's what I want you to feel. Kind of like if you've ever watched a show about cooking and you can almost taste it, you know? So right here, I'm just sweeping my hand back and forth. I have my mag turned sideways. Imagine it like a paintbrush, but you're turning it sideways and you're sweeping it back and forth. You need to get that direction. Right here on the muzzle of the tiger, the hair strokes are really small, and then right up on the nose, it's literally just almost dots. So the textures change as you go from the middle of the nose out to where it's longer fur. And so you have to keep that in mind. So yeah, I'm just sweeping back and forth, getting that direction, because the fur has a direction. Now, when I'm doing a tiger or any animal or any portrait for that matter, when it has a lot of fur, especially like if someone's cat or their dog, you have to pay attention to the direction, but also what I focus on a lot is just the different tone changes. And you could do the texture all day long, but if you don't put the right amount of shade behind it, it kinda just looks like sketchy. I don't know. So when I stencil, I also outline the different tones. It could be the same part of the fur, like if you notice on the cheek of the tiger right below the eye, it's all the same fur, but there's dark parts to it, and then there's also whites in the fur. So you have to pay attention to those tones. So not only am I sweeping with my mag directionally, but you'll probably also see me kind of just turn it flat and make sure I got the right amount of shade on top of that directional shading. The devil is in the details, so take your time. I love to take my time. That's why I do, when people ask me how long something takes, I usually just tell them it takes what it takes. I tell them don't plan on doing anything today, we're gonna be here all day. It might not take all day, but I don't want them looking at the clock wondering when we're gonna get out of here. This is on you for life, so let's take our time and make sure it's polished. So right here, I'm just concentrating on the texture. Right here, I'm using a liner, and I turn the speed down because right there on the nose and on the muzzle of the tiger, you need the texture to be a little more almost like peppery. And so we turn the machine down, we use a liner, and then I move my hand faster. And so it's hitting randomly, and it creates this like dotted, peppery effect. And it really looks like it's just those really tiny, short hairs poking straight up at your eye. And right here, you can kind of see that taking shape. So right here are the whiskers. Whiskers are also one of the most important parts of any like jungle cat. I just do it negative when I stencil it. I used to outline the whisker. Now when I do my stencil, I just do a solid line. And then when I go to tattoo it, I either use a liner, but if it's a bigger piece like this, I could just use my shader and go on each side of the line and just leave that space negative. And then at the end, just pump a nice white highlight across it, and you get those whiskers that really poke out and come alive. One thing I also like to do, if you see towards the edges of this piece, I'm not so much paying attention to each individual hair stroke. I forget where I picked it up, but I think I was just looking at animal photography. And one of the things I saw is that it's really, really focused in on the mouth and the eyes. Basically, just that little triangle of information is just super, super focused in, and as it goes out, it kind of blurs or kind of like fades. There's still details there, but it's just not as focused. And when you can capture that in a tattoo, it kind of just stands apart from other tattoos. It's really just all these little tiny things that don't look like much, but collectively, when it's all done, it's just much more dynamic. And so you might have a tiger tattoo sitting next to another tiger tattoo, and you just can't really figure out why one is better than the other. And it's just these little things, just all these little things, all these little tricks with heavy contrast. Contrast isn't just dark and light, it could be focused and out of focus. It could also be, if you're a color artist, it could be warm and cool tones. It could be muted tones or very vibrant tones. So I always like to keep that in mind. I love contrast in my tattoo work. And any way I can get it, I'll try to do it. Whether it's heavy lines, fine lines, long strokes, short strokes, it all plays its part. So right here, as you can see, I'm doing shading around the whiskers. And a lot of times, I used to take the lazy way out and just do black whiskers. Never again. It's better to just take your time, do it right. And this is, to me, this is the right way to do whiskers, is to shade around every one, especially if you can capture the crisscrossing of a lot of whiskers. It just adds to that realism. Because in real life, those whiskers crisscross, they're messy, and I love to capture that. So right now I'm just sharpening out all the little details, putting ink where it needs to go. Time for some white highlights. I like to do 2 cups of white just because, especially if I have like a lot of highlights to do, I just like to have a fresh, extra white cup for like the second half. Just because when you're doing tattooing, a little bit of ink gets picked up by the needle, a little bit of, plasma and the client's blood, and then as you're dipping it in your cup of white, it starts to make sense. So I just like to have an extra fresh cup of white just in case I need it, and I'm doing a lot of white highlights like this. The way I do the eyes, I kind of change them up beforehand. I like to put a big gloss over the eyes. I like the glassy look, especially on like jungle cats. I want it to have that look of just almost like a soulless predator, and when it has that glassy eyes and you're really focused and they just kind of capture your attention, that's pretty much what I want to hit on. When I do my white highlights, I usually use a standard needle, a number 12, and as you can see, they just jump off the skin. And I use a 9-round liner for that. So he was really happy. I got to see a picture of it fully healed. It looks like the day it was done. And I can't wait to do more, so follow me if you want some tigers. Let's do it. I love it. I could do them every day. It's a labor of love. It gets tedious, but I love to do it. I got the best job in the world, and I'm looking forward to doing this as long as I can, as long as my back holds up. Anyways, that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm an open book. You can DM me. I'll answer any questions you have. But until next time, take care.